It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when I first met Nadia. The kind of day that drifts by slowly, sunlight spilling lazily through the curtains, dust particles dancing in the air like tiny secrets. My mother had already left for work that morning, as she always did. Neat bun, pressed clothes, the faint scent of jasmine clinging to her. I was used to the silence of our house after she left. It was comfortable, predictable. But that day, silence didn't last long. The doorbell rang just after noon. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened the door and saw her standing there, I hesitated for a moment. A woman in her mid-40s, maybe older, dressed with quiet sophistication, cream-colored shawl, soft lipstick, a calm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hello," she said, tilting her head slightly. "Is your mother home?" "She's at work," I replied, uncertain. "Can I help you?" "I'm Nadia," she said, as if the name should mean something to me. We studied together in college. She used to call me her best friend. There was a warmth in her tone, but something about it felt too carefully measured, like she'd rehearsed it on her way here. Still, manners took over. I stepped aside and invited her in. The living room suddenly felt smaller with her in it. She moved gracefully, almost too gracefully, scanning the photographs on the walls as if searching for something lost. Her gaze lingered on one of my mother in her younger days. Laughing, wind in her hair, free in a way I hadn't seen her in years. "You look just like her," Nadia said quietly. I smiled politely, unsure what to say. "People say that a lot," she nodded, eyes still fixed on the picture. "She used to talk about you even before you were born. Said she'd raise you to be stronger than she ever was." I frowned slightly. "You two were close, huh?" "Very," she said. Her eyes flicked toward me, holding my gaze a second too long. There was nostalgia there, and something else I couldn't name. We sat down in the living room and I offered her tea. She refused at first, but later accepted, watching me move about the kitchen as though she were studying me. When I returned with 2 cups, she was looking through an old family album I had left on the coffee table. "She kept these," Nadia said softly, touching one of the pictures with her fingers. I didn't think she would. I sat opposite her, trying to keep my tone casual. "You must have been really good friends for her to keep those." Her lips curved into a small smile. "We were more than friends once." Her words landed quietly but heavily. I blinked, unsure if I had heard correctly. She didn't elaborate, only sipped her tea as though nothing had happened. I felt a strange chill travel down my spine, though the afternoon sun still glowed through the window. She began to tell me stories, college trips, shared secrets, the way my mother used to laugh uncontrollably at silly jokes. Her voice softened as she spoke, eyes growing distant. Then, somewhere between stories, she shifted the focus to me. "You have her eyes," she murmured. "And her smile. The same way she tilts her head when she listens." I laughed awkwardly. "Maybe it runs in the family," but her eyes didn't leave me. "You even carry yourself like her. It's haunting." The room felt suddenly warmer. I reached for my cup, pretending to drink, just to avoid her gaze. She leaned forward slightly, still studying my face, as if memorizing it. "She must be proud," Nadia continued softly. "You're even prettier than she was at your age." Her compliment felt oddly heavy, and I couldn't tell if it was genuine admiration or something else. I forced a small laugh. "Thank you." "That's very kind of you," she smiled, but the smile didn't move her eyes. "You don't have to be polite. I can tell when someone's uncomfortable." Her words startled me. I felt my cheeks flush. "No, I'm fine, really." "I'm sorry," she said after a pause. "It's just, seeing you brings back so many things I thought I'd forgotten." The way she said it, half regret, half longing, made my stomach twist. I looked at the clock. It was only 6 p.m., but the daylight outside had started to dim. I texted my mom. "A woman named Nadia is here. She says she was your classmate. When will you be back?" A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Her reply was short. "Oh, Nadia, I'll be late tonight." "Don't let her wait up. Tell her we'll talk tomorrow." I looked at Nadia again, sitting on our sofa, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She smiled faintly when she caught me staring. "Your mom will be late," I said, trying to sound casual. "Of course," she replied, almost as if she already knew. She always was. There was something in her tone, something layered with history and unspoken pain. I stood up and began collecting the empty cups, eager to do something with my hands. Would you like to have dinner here? I can make something simple until Mom comes. That would be lovely, she said softly, her eyes following me as I walked toward the kitchen. When I turned back briefly, she was still sitting there, calm, quiet, her gaze tracing the photographs on the wall again. Only this time, the faint smile that touched her lips wasn't nostalgic. It was personal. And for the first time that evening, I wished my mother would come home early. Dinner preparations had always been something that calmed me. The familiar rhythm of chopping vegetables, the low hum of the refrigerator, the soft clatter of dishes. But that night, nothing felt calm. Every sound echoed too loudly in my ears. Every moment felt stretched thin. Nadia was still in the living room, her presence filling the space like a slow-burning candle that refused to go out. I could feel her gaze on me even from across the room. When I peeked over my shoulder, she was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, half thoughtful, half something else. Her posture was perfect, back straight, fingers clasped loosely over her knee. There was something unsettling about how still she sat, as if waiting for something only she knew was coming. Trying to shake it off, I returned to slicing cucumbers, forcing a polite tone. Do you still live nearby? I mean, since you and Mom studied together, you must have been in this city for a long time. Her voice floated softly through the room. No, I moved away for years. Your mother and I lost touch. Until recently. Something in her tone, soft, distant, made me look up again. So you two reconnected? Not exactly, she said after a long pause. I found her name in an alumni group. When I saw her picture, I just wanted to see her again. Her eyes met mine for a fleeting second, and I quickly looked away. The knife clinked too hard against the plate. There was weight in her words, a kind of longing that felt misplaced. I tried to smile. She'll be happy to see you. She doesn't get to meet old friends often. She used to talk about you a lot, Nadia said suddenly, her voice lowering. Back then, she would bring your name into every conversation. You were still a child, but she adored you more than anything. I froze for a second. There was nothing wrong with her words, but the way she said them, intimate, wistful, like she was recalling something private, made my pulse quicken. I suppose she still does, I said softly, trying to sound cheerful. Nadia's lips curved into a faint smile. Does she? That question hung in the air too long. I didn't answer. She stood up and walked toward the kitchen doorway, her movements slow and deliberate. The sound of her heels against the marble floor echoed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I noticed how her perfume filled the air, something floral but heavy, almost intoxicating. You shouldn't tire yourself, she said. Let me help. No, it's fine, I replied quickly, too quickly. You're a guest, I insist. Her tone was gentle but carried the weight of someone who rarely took no for an answer. She stepped closer, taking a plate from the counter. Our hands brushed briefly, and I pulled mine back before I could stop myself. She noticed. I could tell by the small smirk that appeared on her face, subtle but knowing. I forced a small laugh. I guess I'm not used to having help in the kitchen. Her eyes flicked toward me again, the kind of gaze that didn't just look, it studied. You're just like her, she said softly. Always trying to do everything alone. Always pretending you're fine. I turned to face her. You knew my mom that well, huh? I knew her heart, Nadia whispered. The words sank into me like a stone dropped in water, rippling through every thought. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask what she meant. The other part didn't want to know. For a few minutes, silence filled the kitchen. Only the ticking clock and faint hum of the fan filled the space between us. Nadia began setting the table, unasked, arranging plates and cutlery with an almost obsessive neatness. Her hands trembled slightly, I noticed, and her gaze seemed lost somewhere far away. When we finally sat down to eat, the atmosphere was thick. I tried to eat, to speak, to pretend things were normal. She asked about my work, my life, the small details people use to make conversation. But every question felt like a test. Do you live alone with your mother? Yes. And your father? He passed away when I was a teenager. Her eyes softened. I'm sorry. She must have been lonely. She doesn't show it, I said, my tone defensive without meaning it. She never did, Nadia murmured. That silence returned, the one that felt too personal, too heavy to belong in an ordinary evening. I stared at my plate, not knowing how to end it. You remind me of her, Nadia continued. The way you bite your lip when you think. The way your voice shakes when you lie. My fork clattered against the plate. Excuse me? She smiled faintly. You said you were fine. You're not. It was too much. I stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. I should check if Mom's called. Her expression didn't change. She'll be late, she said quietly, as though she already knew. I stepped away, clutching my phone. She was right, no new messages. My fingers shook slightly as I typed a new one anyway. Mom, are you sure you'll be late? No response. Behind me, Nadia began humming softly. A tune I didn't recognize. It sent a shiver down my spine. You have a beautiful home, she said from behind me. Warm, but empty. Like it's waiting for someone. I turned to look at her. She was staring at one of our framed family photos again. This time, one of me and Mom standing at the beach years ago. Her expression was unreadable. Would you like some more tea? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. She nodded, her eyes still on the photo. I'll join you. I moved toward my room where we kept the extra tea set, trying to steady my breath. The air felt heavier now, pressing against my skin. As I entered the room, I exhaled deeply, finally letting the tension slip for a second. I reached for the cupboard, pulling out the tray. But then, a soft creak, the sound of footsteps behind me. Slow, deliberate, I froze. My reflection in the mirror caught a shadow just beyond the doorframe. I hadn't heard her get up. My hand tightened around the tray. The night outside was fully dark now, and the only light came from the lamp by the bed. I turned slowly, heart pounding. Nadia stood there at the threshold of my room. Her eyes were calm, her smile faint. I told you, she said gently. You shouldn't be doing everything alone, and in that moment I realized she hadn't come to see my mother anymore. Rita balanced the tray carefully as she pushed open her bedroom door. Dinner's ready, she began, but the words died in her throat. Nadia was already inside. For a heartbeat, Rita didn't understand what she was seeing. Her mother's old friend standing by the window, half turned toward the wall where family photos hung. In her hands, she held Rita's nightdress, pressing the soft fabric against her cheek as if trying to feel something that wasn't there. The room felt suddenly too small. Rita's fingers tightened on the tray until one of the glasses toppled, water spilling across the floor. Nadia didn't flinch. She kept all of these, Nadia murmured, her voice dreamy. Every picture. Every year of your life. Her eyes settled on one photograph, a close-up of Rita as a child, smiling through missing teeth. Slowly, almost reverently, she touched the glass over the frame and whispered, You have her eyes. Rita's pulse hammered. Nadia, what are you doing? Nadia turned then, very slowly. Her expression wasn't cruel or angry, just unbearably sad. I'm sorry, she said, voice trembling. It's just, when I see you, it's like seeing her again. The same eyes, the same way of standing. Your mother used to wear this dress when we lived together in the hostel. Did she ever tell you that? Rita shook her head, speechless. She left me without a word, Nadia continued, stepping closer, the nightdress still gathered in her hands. One day we were planning our future, and the next, she disappeared. And now, after all these years, I walk into this house and see you. And it's as if time never moved. Her voice cracked on the last word. The vulnerability in it made Rita hesitate. For a moment, fear and pity tangled together inside her chest. You should sit down, Rita said softly, forcing her voice to stay steady. Please. But Nadia only smiled faintly, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. I shouldn't have come, should I? I thought maybe if I saw her again, or you, it would stop hurting. The sight of her trembling hands made Rita's throat tighten. You can still talk to her tomorrow. She'll understand. No, Nadia whispered. She won't, she moved on. I never did. The air in the room grew heavier. Rain began tapping against the window, slow and rhythmic. Nadia stepped closer until Rita could see the exhaustion in her face, the years of loneliness etched into her eyes. When I look at you, she said softly, I see her. Every line, every gesture, I see everything I lost. Something inside Rita broke then, not out of fear, but sorrow. Whatever this woman had once been, she was now a ghost of that version, haunted by love that time had refused to bury. I'm not her, Rita said gently, her voice shaking. I'm her daughter. Nadia blinked as if waking from a dream. For a second, the confusion in her eyes softened to shame. I know, she whispered. I just forgot where the memory ended. The silence that followed was unbearable. The rain grew louder, the wind pressing against the windows. Rita finally stepped back toward the door, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. I think you should rest, she said, trying to sound calm. I'll bring your tea to the living room. She didn't wait for a reply. She turned, almost stumbling over the edge of the carpet, and hurried out into the hallway. Her breath came in short bursts as she reached the sofa, setting down the tray with shaking hands. Behind her, she heard the faint creak of the bedroom floorboards. Nadia was following. The clock ticked somewhere behind the silence, slow and unnerving. Rita sat on the sofa, her breath shallow, her palms damp with cold sweat. Every sound, the hum of the fan, the faint traffic outside, felt louder than it should. She didn't dare look toward the hallway, but she knew Nadia was there. The faint rustle of her footsteps made the air heavier. Then Nadia appeared, wearing Rita's nightdress still, her eyes glistening with something between sorrow and madness. She approached slowly, almost as if afraid Rita might vanish if she moved too fast. Rita? Her voice trembled, softer than before. I didn't mean to frighten you. I missed her. Your mother, Rita's voice caught in her throat. She wanted to speak, to tell her to stop, to leave, but the sight of tears forming in Nadia's eyes silenced her. Nadia sat down beside her, the couch sinking slightly under her weight. The faint scent of her mother's old perfume, one Rita remembered from childhood, clung to Nadia's skin. I know this is strange, Nadia whispered, clasping her trembling hands together. You have no idea what it's like to lose someone who once felt like your entire world. Rita's chest tightened. She could see now that Nadia wasn't entirely in control of herself. Her words came out fractured, soaked in old memories. The older woman's gaze was lost somewhere between the past and present, as if, through Rita, she could reach the love she had once lost. Rita shifted slightly, putting a few inches of space between them. You should rest, she managed to say, her voice unsteady. I'll make you some tea, or maybe... But Nadia's hand moved before Rita could finish. She reached out and caught Rita's fingers in her own. The touch was light, trembling, but it sent a chill straight through Rita's spine. Please, Rita whispered, trying to pull away. Nadia didn't tighten her grip. She only looked down at their joined hands, her eyes wet, her lips trembling with words that refused to come out. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a breath. She used to hold my hand just like this, she murmured. Your mother? She'd trace her thumb here. She did the same, her thumb drawing slow, shaking circles against Rita's skin. It made me feel safe, wanted. Rita froze. The world seemed to blur at the edges. She couldn't decide whether to push her away or to listen to this broken woman who clearly carried the weight of something that had never healed. Miss Nadia, she said softly, her voice cracking. You're talking about the past. It's over now. Please, let's not... But Nadia lifted her eyes then, and Rita saw the storm behind them. Years of silence, of waiting, of unspoken grief, she promised, Nadia said, voice rising only slightly, as if the words hurt to say. She promised she'd never forget me. But she did, Rita. She built a new life. She had you. She never looked back. Rita's throat burned with the weight of that confession. She could hear the heartbreak in Nadia's tone, but also the obsession hiding beneath it. I'm sorry, Rita whispered. I'm so sorry, but you need to understand, whatever you had with my mother, it's not something you can find again. Not here, not through me. Nadia shook her head slowly, eyes filling again. You don't understand, she murmured, her voice cracking. You look so much like her. When you smile, when you tilt your head, even the way you speak, sometimes I swear I'm talking to her again. And then it happened. Nadia reached out, gently brushing Rita's hair back from her face. Her fingertips lingered near her cheek. The air turned heavy with something Rita couldn't name. Sorrow, confusion, maybe longing that wasn't meant for her. Rita's pulse quickened. Please don't, she said, barely above a whisper. But Nadia's hand trembled, moving from her cheek to her shoulder. Her voice broke as she whispered, just once more, just to remember how it felt to love her. Rita stood abruptly, the motion making the sofa creak. Her whole body shook. Stop! She said louder now, her voice echoing through the small living room. You can't do this. This isn't right. For a long moment, silence hung between them. Nadia's hand dropped to her lap. Her shoulders trembled. The strength in her face crumbled as she covered her mouth with shaking fingers. "I'm sorry," Nadia whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of tears. "I didn't mean to, I thought if I saw her again I could let go." Rita stood still, her chest rising and falling rapidly, unsure whether to comfort her or to run. The fear inside her began to twist into something else. Pity, maybe. Nadia looked small now, fragile, as if she had been holding on to a ghost for too long. "I think you should rest," Rita finally said, her tone softer now. "Please, I'll get you some water." Nadia nodded weakly but didn't move. She stared at the floor, tears spilling freely. "She promised she'd never forget me," she repeated, the words breaking mid-sentence. "But she did. Everyone does." Rita stood there, her heart aching even as unease still coiled in her chest. For the first time, she saw not the intruder who had scared her, but a woman shattered by a love that had never healed. The night stretched long after that, filled with silence and the faint sound of Nadia's quiet sobs echoing down the hall. Rita didn't sleep. She sat near the window, watching the city lights blur through her tears, wondering how love could turn into something so haunting, so tragic, and why it had to find her this way. The house was silent except for the low ticking of the wall clock and the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Rita sat near the window, her knees pulled close to her chest. Every few minutes, she'd glance at the door, waiting for her mother's familiar voice, her keys jingling, some sign that this strange, heavy night would finally end. When the door finally opened, the sound made her flinch. Her mother, Samina, stepped inside, shaking off her umbrella and setting her bag on the table. Her eyes immediately found the living room and froze. Nadia was still sitting there, wearing Rita's pale blue nightdress. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale under the dim light. She looked smaller now, hollowed out by the storm inside her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Samina's lips parted, trembling with disbelief. "Nadia," she whispered. It wasn't just surprise in her tone. It was guilt, raw, deep, and old. Nadia turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Samina," she said softly. Her voice was fragile, as if every word threatened to break her apart. Rita looked between them, confusion tightening her chest. Her mother's face had gone pale, her eyes darting from Nadia to Rita, as though she wished the ground would swallow her whole. What are you doing here?" Samina finally asked, though her voice lacked strength. Nadia gave a small, sad smile. "I could ask you the same thing. But I suppose you're right where you've always been. Running from your truth." The words struck the room like thunder. Rita's heart began to race again. She looked at her mother, waiting for some kind of explanation, something that could make sense of what she'd witnessed tonight. Samina took a hesitant step forward. "Nadia, please." Not in front of her, but Nadia shook her head. "No, she deserves to know. She deserves to understand why you couldn't even look me in the eyes all these years." Rita felt a strange weight pressing on her chest. "Mom?" she whispered. Samina closed her eyes. Her voice broke when she spoke again. "Nadia and we were friends in college." Nadia let out a short, bitter laugh. "Friends?" she said quietly. "Is that what we were?" Samina's breath caught. Tears welled in her eyes. "We were more than friends," she finally confessed, her words trembling. "We loved each other. But She stopped, pressing a hand against her chest as if the memory itself hurt to hold. "I was scared. Of what people would say. Of what my family would do. So I left." The silence that followed was suffocating. The rain outside grew louder, blurring against the window like soft weeping. Rita could barely process what she was hearing. Her mother, the woman she had always seen as practical, composed, untouchable, was trembling like a child. And Nadia, the stranger who had terrified her hours ago, now looked utterly broken. "You left," Nadia said, her voice cracking. "You didn't even say goodbye. You just disappeared. One day you were in my arms and the next you were gone. Married, pregnant, living a normal life." "I thought it was the only way," Samina whispered. "The world wasn't kind to people like us back then. I thought I could forget. That if I built a new life, the old one would fade." "But it didn't," Nadia replied, eyes glistening. "Not for me." Samina's tears fell freely now. "I'm sorry," she said, stepping closer. You didn't deserve that pain. You didn't deserve to be erased. Nadia looked away, her hands trembling in her lap. I didn't come here to hurt anyone, she murmured. I found your address through an old reunion page. I just wanted to see you once, to remember what love felt like, before it turned into silence. Her gaze shifted to Rita, and for the first time that night, it wasn't unsettling. It was full of sadness. But when I saw her, Nadia said softly, I saw you again, Samina. The same eyes, the same smile. I lost myself for a moment. I'm sorry, Rita. I truly am. Rita's own tears blurred her vision. She didn't know what to say. Anger, pity, confusion all collided in her chest. You both kept so many secrets, she whispered. Samina turned toward her daughter, her voice trembling. I was young, weak. I thought if I buried that part of me, it would die quietly. But it didn't. It stayed with me. Even when I had you, the words cut deep. Rita felt as though she was seeing her mother for the first time. Not the strict, composed woman she'd always known, but someone deeply human, flawed, and broken by choices she had been too afraid to own. Nadia stood up slowly, her legs unsteady. Don't blame her too harshly, she said to Rita. We all make decisions we regret. I just never stopped loving her, even when I knew I should have. Samina reached out a trembling hand, but Nadia stepped back. You don't have to, she said quietly. I didn't come for forgiveness. I came to remember, just once more. The rain outside grew heavier. Thunder rolled in the distance. Nadia turned toward the door, barefoot, still wearing the nightdress. Her movements were slow, as if she were walking through water. She paused near the doorway, her back to them, and said softly, I don't hate you, Samina. I never could. I just wanted to feel alive again. And then she opened the door. Cold air and rain rushed in, brushing against Rita's skin like the whisper of something ending. Nadia, Samina called out, stepping forward, but Nadia only turned slightly, offering a faint, heartbreaking smile. Goodbye, she said. Her silhouette vanished into the night, swallowed by rain and shadows. Samina sank to her knees by the door, her sobs breaking the silence that followed. Rita stood still for a long time, staring into the darkness outside. Somewhere deep inside her, fear had turned to sorrow, and sorrow into understanding. That night, she realized the truth wasn't just about who her mother had been. It was about love itself. How it can survive years of silence, hide behind closed doors, and still come knocking when you least expect it, asking to be remembered. Morning light crept gently through the curtains, thin and pale, as if even the sun hesitated to touch the house that had known too much silence. Days had passed since that night, yet the echoes of it clung to every wall, every breath. The once lively rhythm of Rita's home now felt hollow, like someone had taken all the laughter out and left behind only the spaces where it used to live. Her mother barely spoke anymore. She moved through the house like a shadow, quiet and fragile. Sometimes Rita would find her sitting in the living room long after midnight, staring at the door as though she still expected Nadia to walk through it. Rita didn't know what to say to her. Part of her wanted to ask why. Another part of her already knew there were no words that could truly explain a lifetime of fear and choices made in silence. At night, when rain whispered against the windows, Rita often replayed everything in her mind, the trembling in Nadia's hands, her voice breaking when she said, I just wanted to feel alive again. There had been no hatred in her, no cruelty, only the unbearable weight of a love that had never been allowed to exist. The world had punished Nadia for loving someone in the wrong era, and her mother had punished herself for surviving that love. And now, Rita was left holding the pieces of both their stories, unsure what to do with them. One evening, about a week later, Rita returned home from the market just as dusk was falling. The street lamps were beginning to glow, their light cutting through the misty air. As she reached the gate, she noticed an envelope tucked between the bars, its edges damp from the evening fog. Her name was written across it in delicate, trembling handwriting. Rita. Her heart skipped. She tore it open right there, beneath the orange light of the lamp, her fingers shaking slightly. The letter inside was written on plain paper, the ink smudged in places as though the writer's tears had fallen while she wrote. My dear Rita, I don't know if you'll ever read this, or if your mother will allow herself to, but I needed to say the things I couldn't that night. I never meant to frighten you. I only wanted to see love once more before I die. Your face reminded me that love no matter how wrong or misunderstood, is still love. It is what makes us human, what gives us the courage to remember even when forgetting seems easier. I have carried your mother in my heart for 30 years. I forgave her long before I saw her again. Tell her that. Tell her I never hated her for leaving. I only hated the silence that followed. Thank you for listening, even when you were afraid. In you, I saw the innocence we lost and the hope we both needed to believe in again. Take care of her, Rita. The world may never know what we shared, but perhaps you now understand the cost of hiding love. With quiet affection, Nadia Rita stood there for a long time after finishing the letter, her eyes glistening in the dim light. The paper trembled in her hands as if the words themselves still breathed with sorrow. She pressed it to her chest, and the tears finally came, slow at first, then unstoppable. Inside, her mother sat by the window, staring into the rain-soaked garden. Rita walked in silently, the letter still in her hand. "Mom," she whispered. Samina turned. Her eyes were swollen, rimmed with sleeplessness. Rita didn't speak right away. She simply walked up to her and handed her the letter. Samina's hands shook as she unfolded it. As her eyes moved down the page, her lips began to quiver. By the time she reached the last line, she was crying so softly it sounded like a prayer. "She forgave me," she whispered, the words almost inaudible. "After everything, she forgave me." Rita sat beside her and wrapped her arms around her mother. For the first time in years, Samina didn't pull away. She leaned into her daughter's shoulder, sobbing quietly like someone releasing years of pain they had carried alone. "You should have told me," Rita murmured, her voice trembling but kind. "Maybe then she wouldn't have been so lonely." Samina closed her eyes. "I thought I was protecting you," she said. "From judgment? From stories I couldn't explain. But maybe I was just protecting myself from remembering." The rain outside grew heavier, tapping steadily against the window, like the rhythm of forgiveness itself. They sat like that for a long time, mother and daughter, bound by the same silence that had once torn someone else apart. And for the first time, Rita understood that sometimes love isn't about what survives, but what remains after everything else is gone. Later that night, when Rita lay in bed, she placed the letter on her bedside table. The words glowed faintly under the lamp, fragile yet eternal. She thought about Nadia walking away barefoot in the rain, her figure dissolving into the darkness, and about her mother's face when she whispered her name again after decades of silence. Love, Rita realized, doesn't always arrive in the right form. Sometimes it comes broken, desperate, and haunting. But even in its most painful shape, it is still proof that we have lived, that we have felt deeply enough to be marked by it. As she closed her eyes, her voice, soft and distant, seemed to drift through the rain. That night taught me something. Love doesn't always come in the right form. Sometimes it arrives broken, desperate, and haunting, but still human. The rain continued outside, gentle and endless. The piano music of memory played quietly in her mind as the screen of her thoughts faded into darkness. And with it, the echo of a love that was never forgotten.